Good afternoon. I'm John Locke, Dean of the GW School of Engineering and Applied Science, and I'm really excited to introduce this next panel on trustworthy AI. As you saw in this morning's video, trustworthy AI is a major focus of our AI-related work here at GW, where we recognize that trust is not just a technical problem to be solved, but trust is a social construct that we can't ignore in the rapid proliferation of new technologies like AI. And that, in keeping with this forum, requires consideration of policy and law, business and international affairs, ethics and equity. And today actually represents the public launch of the GW Trustworthy AI Initiative, GWTAI. A truly pan-university effort that brings together faculty and students from all around campus to holistically address issues of AI and trust. These connections can already be seen in our Trails Institute, Trustworthy AI in Law and Society, which is jointly funded by the National Science Foundation, NSF, and the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST. In our NSF Research Traineeship Program, DTACE, co-design of trustworthy AI systems, and in a number of other major research and education activities, including today's forum. So please visit the GWTAI website in your program. You can find the link in the program, QR code on page 4, to find more information about our work and for how to get involved. And come engage with our students at the closing reception where they will be presenting posters on their work. So as part of this public launch, we are also very excited to announce the GW Trustworthy AI External Partnership Program, where companies, government agencies, national labs, and other organizations can partner with us to tackle the challenges and leverage the opportunities of trustworthy AI. And I'm particularly pleased to announce as our inaugural partner, SAIC, a premier Fortune 500 technology integrator focused on advancing the power of technology and innovation to serve and protect our world. SAIC and future partners will benefit from hiring our students and engaging in our research, and we will benefit from their expertise and real-world problem statements. Together, we can develop AI-enabled systems and inform national and global AI policy in a way that achieves trust and benefits society. So I'm now very pleased to introduce the moderator of our panel on trustworthy AI, Irwan Gianchandani, Assistant Director of the new National Science Foundation Directorate for Technology, Innovation, and Partnerships, or TIP. Joining him on the panel are Jill Chrisman, VP and Executive Director of the Digital Safety Research Institute at UL Research Institutes, Andy Henson, Senior VP of the Digital Innovation Factory at SAIC, the inaugural partner of our GW Trustworthy AI External Partnership Program, and LM Tabasi, Associate Director for Emerging Technologies in the Information Technology Laboratory at the National Institute of Standards and Technology. We will have 40 minutes for this session, and a reminder to please submit your questions via Pigeonhole, that QR code that's on the back of your name tag, so that we can see your questions in real time. Please welcome our esteemed panelists.
Well, thanks very much for that great introduction, John, and good afternoon, everybody. It's really an honor and a pleasure to be with you today, and I think I say that not just for myself, but also for my esteemed colleagues who are on this panel. And I'd like to think that we've saved the best for last, because I think if we're going to be successful when it comes to thinking about artificial intelligence and the deployment of AI systems with humans in the loop all across this country and all around the world, we have to think about the context of trustworthiness and how we can ensure that our systems are, to some definition of trustworthy across the board. So we have three, I think, phenomenal experts, right, who've spent a lot of time throughout their careers, whether it be in industry, whether it be in government, et cetera, really thinking through notions of trustworthiness. And I'd love to make this a conversation, and I'd love for you guys to have an opportunity to banter back and forth as well as we go about the next 35 minutes or so. But I wanted to start first with just a little bit of grounding for the audience and for all of us, really. from each of you a little bit about what each of your organizations is doing in the context of trustworthy AI and how that has implications for all of us. And then also, as you do that, if you could take a little bit of time to also define trustworthy to your mind's eye, right? Because I think that, this is a very broad term, or could be construed as a very broad term, and it's important that we all have sort of a shared understanding of what we mean by trustworthy. So maybe we'll start with you first, Jill, and then kind of work our way across from left to right.
Hello, everybody. It's such an honor to be here. And I wanted to first talk about the Digital Safety Research Institute, which I'm now leading and standing up as part of UL Research Institutes. We are a proud, one of the first members of NIST AI Safety Institute Consortium, and we are really proud to be there. We think it's phenomenal that you're doing this. The risk management framework has wonderful AI controls, which we're now working at implementing. And to throw in a little bit of provocativeness so that we can get the debate going, I sort of like to think of trustworthiness as insurability. So a lot of times, like if you look at the history of electricity, and the idea of insurance for your house so that you could make sure your possessions and everything else weren't burned down. That was a big part of when electricity came out for how we built trust. And so now the thought is, if you're a company and you're going to build an AI system, could you self-insure that system against harms to the public? And so we want to try to wrap that idea of how do you measure the insurability of systems as part of sort of an overarching measure of trust for the, on top of sort of the controls that we're doing for the risk management framework. So that's what we're working on.
And how would you define trustworthy?
That's the insurability measure. Like we always get into arguments of, is AI good or bad? Like, does it benefit society more than it actually harms? So if you look at the profits that you make as something that would be benefiting society versus the harms, which is ensuring that you will not be causing harms or providing reparations for any harms you cause, is actually setting the balance between good and sort of bad AI.
Got it. Andy?
Yeah, thanks. Pleasure to be here. At SAIC, we're hyper-focused on the operational end of AI. So we do research. We definitely look at the sort of three horizons of technology. But there's so many problems right now that AI can solve in its current state. That and one of the things we're most excited about the partnership, the public-private partnership, is that we get the research direction to them, and like, hey, we're dealing with real tough problems right now. So we're hyper-focused on that. How do we use the technology to go change problems now? Which changes our definition of trust, right? It can't be, it's cool, it gives you Google-like results when, societal impacts are on the line. It's got to be, and this is a really simple definition of trust, it's got to work for the person that's using it. It's got to solve their problem, right? And that's complex in nature.
Okay, Elham, so we've heard a little bit about insurability, got to work for the person. How about you? And tell us a little bit about NIST and the AI Safety Institute as well.
Happy to. Thank you, Erwin. Thanks to GW, John, and all of the organizers to include me in this wonderful panel and this discussion. So starting with NIST. NIST is a non-regulatory agency under Department of Commerce with sort of a unique mission to promote innovation and U.S. industrial competitiveness. NIST was established back in 1902, and we kept the same mission, and standard and measurement is actually written in our Constitution. We have a very broad portfolio of research, and we have a long-standing tradition of cultivating trust in technology. And we do that by contributing to developing technically sound standard, advancing measurement science and standards that make technology more reliable, more robust, more secure, more private, in other words, more trustworthy. We have done it for many different areas of technology, advanced communications, in the quantum information, cybersecurity, and that's exactly what we have been doing in the space of AI. Answering your questions about what constitutes trust and what trustworthiness means, directed by congressional mandate, we developed a AI risk management framework, which is a voluntary framework for managing the risk of AI in a flexible, structured, and measurable way. I can talk about each of those attributes, but I want to start talking about the measurable attribute that's very kind of near and dear to our heart at NIST, the concept of the metrology. So many of us are a big fan of this quote from Lord Kelvin that if you cannot improve it, if you cannot measure it, you cannot improve it. So for us to actually start thinking about how to improve trust and trustworthiness, first we have to be able to measure that. But going back to, Erwin, the way you framed the question, measurement requires understanding of what to measure. So in AI RMF, again, starting with a lot of really good works that the community has done, we started conversations with the community to what constitutes trust? What are the characteristics of a trustworthy system? And with the work of the community, we came up with these 7 characteristics: valid and reliable, safe, secure, and resilient, privacy enhanced, explainable and interpretable, fair with harmful bias managed, and transparent and accountable. We worked with the community to come up with sort of a shared understanding, exactly as you said, Erwin, around each of them, because definition is hard, and definition, as it was mentioned, can change by time as technology changes. So that becomes a trustworthy kind of approach that NIST AI RMF is taking to the concept of the trustworthiness, with the intention of bringing the community on the same understanding of this component so we can work on the measurement and assurance that, Jill, that you said that's extremely important. If I can also make one other point is that in the AI RMF, we look at the trustworthy AI and responsible AI as sort of related but separate concepts. So the key concepts for responsible AI emphasizes social responsibility, human-centeredness, and sustainability. And the trustworthy characteristics becomes the components or characteristics that the designer, developer, evaluator needs to build on that. So that was AI RMF. It, through 4 functions of map, measure, manage, and govern, provides some recommendations, controls on how to do the risk management. It was released on January 2023, and being part of a National Metrology Institute, most of our focus right after release of AI RMF was on the measure functions or the measurement. So because exactly, Jill, as you said, it's really important to be able to measure and get to that assurance. And to your point, how private is private, how safe is safe, how secure is secure, really depends on the context of use. So in AI RMF, in our approach, we don't set the threshold because it depends on the concept of use, it depends on the social constructs, it depends on who is using it for what, or basically understanding of how the system, how the AI systems is being used, what environment, how it's going to interact with the environment, who is being used, who's going to operate the AI systems, because we all agree that AI systems are more than just data, compute, and algorithm. They are complex interactions of data, compute, and algorithm with the human, with the environment. So I'll pause here. You asked about the Safety Institute. I'll be happy to talk about this, but I want to also be respectful of the time of the panel.
No, that's great, Elham. As I listen to each one of you talk a little bit about your organizations and your definitions, and I think the RMF is probably the most comprehensive document that we have out there that is a resource for everyone. But I think about issues around measurement science, for instance. I think about the notion of insurance and the financial sector coming to play and bear in that context as well. I think about how you do that transformation from research to products and services with humans in the loop, right? Does it work for the human, for the intended end user, and even the non-intended end users for that matter? As I think about that, it strikes me that this is perhaps one of the most if not the most interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary spaces that we are witnessing before our very eyes today. And so I wonder if you could spend a little bit of time, each of you, talking a little bit about how this is so. How is it so that it's as interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary as it is? Why are these different disciplinary perspectives so important to the work that you all are undertaking and to the advancement of trustworthiness in our AI systems? And sort of what advice do you have for folks as we try to bring together multiple disciplines, which I think historically we tend to struggle with, right? We've tended to struggle with. There are case studies where it's worked well. There are also plenty of case studies where it hasn't worked well. So maybe I'll start this one with you.
Sure. What we're seeing in the current wave of AI is a build upon previous technology waves, right? That's one thing, right? So it's inherently interdisciplinary in that you can't have the current AI without the cloud revolution that we had in the 2010s. So that's inherently just technology interdisciplinaries. But there's also a lot of regulation impacts. There are job impacts, people who are just average users who are saying, all of a sudden I can do stuff at my job I couldn't do before. There's education impacts. How do we teach our kids now? Like the spidering of the impacts happened both more rapidly and more thoroughly than any of the previous waves of technology, the cyber wave, the cloud wave, the internet wave prior to that. And I think the internet one's probably most close, right? Because it affected so much of society so quickly. And I think we're seeing that same sort of impact where, educators, government is struggling. How do I wrap my arms around this, right? And with frameworks and approaches and legislation, and companies are struggling. How do I ban this? Do I not ban it? Do I allow my my data to be used in this way? We're seeing this in large tech companies, scaled tech companies. Do I kind of violate my trust with my users and use this to get ahead? We're seeing that in the news now. And so I think that interdisciplinary sprawl is huge for lots of reasons. Those are just a couple of the reasons, from a technical perspective. And I think advice. I think my advice is everybody has something to offer. I don't care if I have English majors, I have history majors that are working on AI right now, that are, something way far away from what you would think would be applicable, but it is applicable. And I think everybody has something to offer in this, and there isn't a segment that I've seen yet that can't benefit. And lots of folks have said this, and I'll sort of echo it, is like, AI isn't going to take the job. It's the person who gets ahead and learns how to use AI to enhance their productivity that is absolutely going to get the job.
As a collaborative partner.
That's right.
In the work
A human-machine team. That's what we got to be leaning into. And it doesn't matter what the job is, right? I think that is affecting everyone. So that'd be my advice.
Great points, and I agree with all of the things mentioned. I want to answer that from two different aspects and perspective. One is one of the things that we learned in the development of the AI RMF. Again, going back to the socio-technical nature of the AI, we need a community that develops the technology. This becomes mostly the skills and expertise in computer science, mathematics, statistics, and those foundational sciences. But we also need to engage the community that study the impact of the technology. That becomes the psychologists, cognitive scientists, sociologists, philosophers, and get them all to work with each other. Another aspect that bring up the interdisciplinary is that AI is sort of a foundational technology that other type of use cases or domain can be built on top of that. Finance, healthcare. So it needs this hybrid of horizontal and vertical approach that again makes it necessary for the domain experts in, for example, finance to work with AI experts or AI risk management experts to figure out how to use AI, for example, responsibly and in a trustworthy manner for the finance. This thing is messy and complex, but also wonderful because you're bringing many different perspectives, backgrounds, thought processes into the work. And we all know that when you increase the diversity and inclusivity, a lot of really good things can happen. In terms of advice is, make sure that there are different voices, part of the around the table, and their voices are being heard and incorporated. So if one of the questions that I recently got is how to make sure that AI works for people with disability. Well, make sure that those people are part of their design systems and they can tell you things that doesn't come to our mind. And then the other advice is that start at step 0 or before 0 and spend time on getting on the shared understanding on terminology. Work on those vocabulary, terminology, and taxonomy, because one of the things that we learned is even the terms that has, there are dictionary definitions for them, such as risk, bias, can be defined and interpreted and understood differently by different groups. So when you bring an interdisciplinary people together, how bias is understood or risk is understood, financial sector versus healthcare versus statistics are going to be all very different. So these two advice. Thank you.
As you answer this question, Jill, I also want to just reflect a little bit on something that both of you have said, right? That everybody has a role to contribute here potentially, right? And I'm also trying to make sure I'm responsive to the audience and some of the questions. One of the questions is, how should we promote AI when so many people have doubts about its use in society? And I think that at least I could argue from one frame of reference, by including a broader cross-section of society in the design and the governance of AI technologies, you start to make it more compatible and more understood and appreciated by that broader cross-section. But Jill, I wonder if you want to react to that statement or even some of what your colleagues have said.
I'll react to that because they took away all my answers. So, what am I going to say? I think that the only advice that I would have, AI is, especially now with the generative AI, it's basically made creativity, software programming, all kinds of things available to everyone. But it's not perfect. And so I think the advice that I would offer is, as you play with these new technologies, first think about what do I know well and play with the technologies in that context, and then try to really learn what is the strengths and limitations of these things so you don't get caught up in using it in an inappropriate way. And so the advice I always give somebody who's new to the field, sort of starting out saying, how could I use AI more responsibly, is first get it to do things you already know about, get it to help you, and this way you can sort of start to scale out, even in your mind, what's it good at and what is it not good at, before you start exploring areas that you may have less expertise.
I'll just add on that, because it's a really interesting question around how do we promote it when people are skeptical of it. And one of the things that I like to start with is listing all the ways that it already helps people, and they don't even know that they're using it. In fact, I think the best applications I've seen, whether it be in government, in state and local, or even in commercial, is when it's just solving a problem, and underneath there is a really well-trained model. But when you lead with AI and say, AI is going to fix that for you, as opposed to, we have a really great solution for your problem, the conversation shifts. And that's not to say we shouldn't, acknowledge that AI is in there, acknowledge there may be bias in the model, even measure those things. But the average person, just the average user at the end, just wants their dinner booked faster, wants their Uber to get there faster, right? Wants to optimize the best route to get where they're going to save time. Like, those are all AI applications that people are using now, right? And I think once you start to highlight that, there's a lot of things that are trusted, have good capabilities. Now there's a spectrum of trust. If you were to say, like, hey, I want to get my heart transplanted by AI right now, yeah, sure. Let's raise some hands and say, maybe not, right? But if we're talking about, can it order dinner faster? What's the level of trust that's required, right?
Right.
So.
And I think also being candid about the failures, right?
Yeah.
We don't want to hide the failures under the rug. We want to be open and transparent that, yeah, there were biases in this particular application of AI, and here's how we're learning from that along the way as well. Elham, you were going to jump in.
I will quickly jump in to say that, building on what was said, it becomes really about maximizing the benefits while minimizing the negatives. And I mentioned about the definitions of risk. So the way a risk is defined in AI RMF is a complex measure of the probability of an event happening and the impact of that. Impact or consequence can be positive, negative, or neutral, which makes risk management about maximizing benefits at the same time minimizing the negatives. And that's having that in mind, that by not using AI, what's the risk of not using AI in the conversation becomes important. And the other thing, to your point, Erwin, is that lack of data, that lack of reliable data on limits and capabilities, what works and what doesn't work. That is, now I get this opportunity to answer your first question about the institute. So the tasking that we got as part of the EO and the US AI Safety Institute, we really look at them as a excellent opportunity for us to turbocharge the efforts that we have been doing as part of the AI program, as part of the tasking in the EO that we have, a majority of them focusing on advancing measurement science, developing guidelines for evaluations, for red teaming, for safety and security of AI systems, create test environment, many of them collaborations with NSF. So as the research community, and we bring the whole community together to think about these things and put more science-based, empirically validated data out, that can help getting to answering a lot of the questions that you were talking about, Andy.
You know, I want to build on that comment that you just made, Elham, because as you think about the AI Safety Institute, inherently there is this sort of public-private partnership that has to come together for success, right? And you know, my own directorate at the National Science Foundation really is about trying to bring practitioners and users together with the researchers and the scientists to help shape some of the research directions. So I wonder if you could comment, each of you, a little bit on the importance of public and private stakeholders coming together. You know, this panel, government and industry, right? And this location in an academic setting, for instance. So how do you see the importance of public and private engagement? What are some of the efforts that have been most successful that to your mind's eye? And where do you see pain points and challenges where we still have more to do to overcome them? Whomever wants to.
Sure, yeah. Look, I think it's not just important, I think it's a national imperative that we do this discourse on AI, the relationships that we're building together. Because what used to happen is research got to do its research thing, and then it got some testing, and then industry would get involved and say, okay, we'll take the best of the best and we'll go apply that. And that whole process could take years, and that was okay. It's not taking years anymore. It's happening in months, right? And so, you know, that's really exciting and really scary, that is just the pace of it. And by the way, it's not a matter of, are we going to do this? It's happening, right? It's who do we want in the conversation to help lead it is really the only question at hand. It's happening. It's, you know, this is our, you know, sort of Oppenheimer moment. It's going to happen. We want the people that are thinking about this, that are following this, that are creating standards, that are talking, you know, in public forums to say, how do we mitigate the bias? How do we get around those things? We have to do this. And so, you know, I think it's vitally important. It's absolutely why we've accelerated and kicked off this initiative with GW, you know, ahead of schedule, because it's just, we have to do this, and we have to do it as often as possible. And so, you know, not to be existential here, but I just think it's happening so much faster than we realize that it is not a linear process anymore. It has to be an iterative process, meaning we have to be on the operational side, have to bring the real world problems that need solved to researchers faster, to the, you know, the challenges around how do we govern this. We have to address those faster. We can't wait for legislative cycles to come to bear before we address these things anymore. So,
right. I think we are tackling some very difficult problems. We don't know how to evaluate AI. I'm talking about our experience at NIST, again, an agency with 120 years experience in technology evaluations. Our evaluations has been laboratory testing when we get the systems out of the context of use and evaluate them. We may think that we have perfected the art and science of those evaluations, but as we just talked, it's not going to be enough for AI. So how to do all of these things? And then we're trying to do all of these things in a space that, you know, the speed and scale of the change in technology, but also the time from the product comes to the market to get, you know, widespread adoption are very short and becoming shorter and shorter. So we have to really figure out how to do the cycle of foundational research to applied research to guidelines to adoption. And do these things better and fast. And every component of the community, from the academia research community that's are the source of innovations, to industry that has all of the, you know, data and compute to innovate faster, to those that are using the technology, to regular citizens that, knowing or not knowing, are interacting with AI systems. We have to bring all of them together, and bringing all of them together is through building more of these consortiums. I want to just give a shout out to NER and NSF for putting the pilot out. So these are wonderful things, and I'm just going to quote Fei-Fei Li or colleagues on the NER task force that rebooting the ecosystem of research in the US. So we have to really think about what are the things we need to do, not only bringing the communities together, but try to do things better, faster, and more efficient.
And this audience is very savvy on this, but for anyone who might not know, the NARE, the National AI Research Resource, trying to be able to make available access to compute and data and software and other workflows that allow researchers and students everywhere, right, really democratize access to the core ingredients that you need, the core capabilities that you need to be able to conduct the AI research in a whole slew of different sectors. Jill, as you think about this question, I also want to ask you a little bit about, as we think about positives of AI systems, failures of AI systems, who decides, right? Is it government? Is it business? Is it users? Who decides at the end of the day as we think about this public-private partnership and engagement about the impacts of AI systems and what's working and what's not?
I think we were talking about how everyone's involved. I think everyone has to decide. I think this gets a little bit back to the sort of good, bad insurability space. So, if there was a report out that one of the pharmaceutical industry actually developed an AI model that was able to create a bunch of cures for rare diseases, communicable diseases, and they found that by flipping one bit in the optimization criteria, it actually created some of the worst harms that you could think of. So now the question is, how do you actually let that good out while also protecting that model so that it can't be taken and retrained to do harm? And so it's always this balance, and I think we have to decide, how do we want to protect things? How do we want to let things out that are going to do good and proliferate them? And this includes everything that's used to make an AI model and the data sets. Everything. We have to really think about, what do we want? And as a society, we're going to have to decide that.
Each of you has talked a little bit about the rapid pace of innovation that we've witnessed, that we are witnessing before our very eyes in AI. I'm curious if you could reflect a little bit on where you think we might be 10 years from now, 15 years from now, right? And as you think that far out too, also think a little bit about what does success constitute in the context of trustworthy AI systems. So how will we know 10 years from now that we were on the right trajectory? How might we have early signals 5 years from now or a year from now, right? That when we come back to this forum next year, we can say that this is the progress that we're making that's moving us clearly in the right direction. Jill?
Okay, I'll start.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things that I really like about my insurability measure and then having companies self-insure their systems is that it becomes an actual measure of success, just a broad measure. So we can look at how many AI companies or companies that have AI built into their systems are actually going to insure their own products against public harm and reimburse people reparations for what those harms are. And just by measuring where we are in terms of transforming the ecosystem to something that's sort of wild and crazy now to something that's actually insured, I think is an actual pretty good measure.
Yeah, look, I think it's an exciting topic. I think we have some guidelines on how technology has rolled out in the past, and we can kind of look forward with some history guiding us. And I think back to the conversations in 2010 about cloud and how it's just like somebody else's computer. I don't see why anyone would ever do that and just lose control over that. And now it's just kind of a really commonplace way of compute and store. And thank goodness, right? Because it's gotten us where we needed to be around AI. And so I think in 10 years it's going to be much more commonplace to have the conversations around should we or not will be less. I think it'll be how did we do this before without, in many cases. But I think my real measure of success is are we getting the critical skills proliferated out beyond the hard sciences, and the PhD level students love them, great, right? But are we getting to the disenfranchised? Are we getting to the marginalized communities? Are they getting training on how this can affect their life? Are they getting equal access to those sorts of things? To me, in 10 years, that should be our success measure. And it's going to happen technology-wise either way. But who's it going to happen to is what, in my mind, is going to determine as a country if we're successful or not.
Are we designing systems by the demography and the geography that's using those systems to some degree?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yep. I have a very terrible time and difficult time to predicting anything next week. So 10 years is very long term for me. But there are parallels in the history that we can go and look at this. You know, the electricity that we are taking it right now for granted, and it's such a safe thing to do. It wasn't like that, right? And coming from institute that standards and contributing to the development of standards is really important. I think all of the work that we are doing today, if in 10 years, 5 years, hopefully sooner than 10 years, we want a technology that's easy to do the right thing, difficult to do the wrong thing, and easy to recover if unintentionally something bad has happened. So if you look at going back again to electricity, the 3-pin plug, right? It's almost impossible to put it into the outlet in a wrong way. So preventing a lot of really bad and dangerous things that can happen. So with that in mind, what we can do as part of the design and development of the technology, so getting all of these conversations about safeguards, guardrails, checking for the assurance way back into the design time, and build technologies, the terms security by design, privacy by design might be old, but really trustworthy by design. Think about this at the get-go. And then for all of these things to happen, we also need to understand really what are the type of risks, what are the mitigations, what mitigations works. So that gets to the battery of the evaluations and tests and globally interoperable tests going back to the geography. We talk about AI being socio-technical, but the notion of any of these trustworthiness characteristics, for example, privacy, fairness, might be different across the globe, and the threshold for privacy and all of those can be different. So how to build that interoperable testing methodology and metrics, and maybe even benchmarks that allow for the assurances that Jill, you talked about. But again, as a whole, getting the conversations into the design of the technology that works fair and safe and right for everybody. And that include, as you said, change the conversations from can we to should we. So instead of just trying to build something because we can, think about the impact, the consequence, and do it in the right way.
That's great, Ilham. So we have a diverse set of folks in the room with a range of roles and responsibilities: researchers, practitioners, CIOs, technicians, students, folks from different disciplines. Quick 30 seconds, because we are running out of time. I'll ask each of you, what's one thing you would advise them, you would encourage the audience to think about, to do? What's one takeaway for folks coming out of this conversation today around trustworthy AI?
I guess I already gave my advice for playing with generative AI models on a subject you already know, to sort of start to understand what its capabilities and limitations are.
Yeah, I think playing is really important here, right? Do something fun with it. Certainly solve something at work, school, right? That's important, right? But do something you enjoy with it. Do the art, right? Do the voice to text, the text to voice, right? And set it up locally. I think that's the thing that really pushes most people over the edge. Is it was fun. I enjoyed that. That was a good interaction. Not like, oh, it's so complex. I don't even know where to go with it. There's so many buttons, and play.
Be curious. So don't stay open-minded. Don't have judgment. Let the science do the science. If you're a scientist, follow the science. If you're outside of the science, and let the empirical evidence lead you to the result.
Fabulous. Let's give our panel a round of applause. Thank you all very, very much.